also the Marquis of Miami, as he likes to be known as. Joe Grow. Who else do I see?
You have An Fan, Senior Brand Manager, and Glenn Wolfson, CEO of Drew Estate.
And I see, Glenn, you've come to join us and spy on us and see what we're up to.
Greetings, Scott.
Welcome to the Drew Estate team, and I'm sure there'll be more people coming along here to join us. But a special warm welcome to Johnathan, or Mr. Drew, or JD. What do you prefer to be called, Johnathan?
JD would be great. It's great to see you as well, Scott. We had a great time together on our last trip, and it's good to see that you're healthy and you're doing your cigar thing. And it's great to see the full Drew Estate team come out in support of this. You're a great partner, and really been looking forward to this day. So thank you very much.
No, it's a pleasure, Johnathan. I'm aware very much that your time has been taken up with America, and I'm also aware that, you know, because of the situation with America and the lockdown and everything else, that's where you've been devoting your time. So I think it's important that the guys realize, I think this is probably one of the first events you've done outside the States. Would that be correct?
Yeah. First of all, this is actually the very first international event that I've done virtually, period. And you know, since the beginning of the year, I did a handful of virtual events within the United States, and they've gone really well. But this is my first international virtual event this year and ever. So you know, it's a historic moment for me, a personal historic moment, and a great show of confidence that so many of our guys within the company have made this our event to share with you. So love it.
Oh, fantastic. I'll try to talk slowly for you, Johnathan. And I've already broken the JD rule, okay?
And for me, Scott, I can't bloody understand your accent.
Well, what we'll do is we'll put subtitles. Right, that makes a point. Can you all make sure you mute yourself, please?
No, I don't like muting myself. Oh, Johnny Drew, how are you?
I'm doing great, man. Thank you so much. Yeah, you know, like Scott said, there's so much going on both here in the U.S., but we're watching everything globally. I mean, when you think about our factory in Nicaragua, which you know, our story is kind of a tale of two cities between Nicaragua and the United States, not from a city approach, but from where we're based. We look at things heavily from our market, from a position of where we put our cigars, market and sell our cigars, both here in the U.S. and North America, Europe, and obviously Asia. But also really think on the other side of this equation, which lots of the times gets lost in the shuffle when you really get into the marketing stuff and the sales stuff, which is our tobacco. And we're factory people. You know, we don't have our brands made for us by somebody. And there's nothing wrong with that. I've done that earlier on in my career. But from a standpoint of our factory is the largest factory in Nicaragua and potentially the second largest factory on the planet for premium cigars. And the thing that makes us so different than most of the other factories is that in Nicaragua, you'll notice many of the factories, and there's superb factories there, including our partners in Hoyt, Nicaragua, and others. They love Nicaraguan tobacco, and that will become the tobacco of choice. You look at the Dominican Republic, and while they do import, you know, obviously different wrappers from different countries and stuff, the tobacco that they so focus on and seems to be so heavily part of all of their blends is always Dominican tobaccos, and with indifference to blends. We are so different than that at Drew Estate. Not only do we really not market a puros, which, as you guys know, is a tobacco, un cigarro, that's made in one country. That's, you know, Hoya does that exceptional, Padron does that exceptional, others do it exceptional in Nicaragua. But we're a very different company. We're a company who, we take a very blended approach to our product. And unlike the spirits category, where that would be more of a lower quality product, in the world of premium cigars, I find that to be even a higher level of premium, because what you're really doing when you think about it, you're making a 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 country blend of tobaccos. First of all, it's very complicated. It requires deep inventory, as you guys know, through holding different SKUs as a retailer. If you're carrying 4 SKUs, or a manufacturer and you're holding 500 or 1,000 SKUs, each SKU is heavy on your CFO is never happy with you. But from a standpoint of our pain and our journey and our preoccupation with tobacco, we buy and grow so much tobacco in Ecuador and Honduras and Nicaragua and Mexico and Brazil and Africa and Indonesia. And when we talk about the United States, we're the #1 grower of tobacco here and purchaser of tobacco for premium cigars, clearly, whether that's Kentucky tobacco or Florida tobacco, tobaccos from even up into Canada, Louisiana. We purchase Pennsylvania, Connecticut. We are connected and going through a lot in the crisis, global crisis, at the, not just with it where we sell our cigars, but almost even more importantly, where we grow and process and buy our tobacco from. So it's a very complicated aspect on our side, from the Drew Estate manufacturing side.
Johnathan, that's a fantastic introduction. What I would like to do, though, I know you probably get bored with this and you probably get the same question every time. I want to rewind the clock, please, because you joined the cigar industry as the cigar boom was kind of coming to an end, I guess. So it would be good to take a step back, please, if you don't mind. I'm sure the Americans have heard the story a million times, but for us, it's quite a fresh story. So can you take the clock back, please, to the very beginning, and what prompted you to get into the industry? Why did you choose Nicaragua? And when you got to Nicaragua, how were you accepted as the guy from New York? Yeah? So if you could just explain that, it'd be wonderful, please.
Yeah, man, my pleasure, Scott. Wow. So just going back a little bit, growing up in New York, Long Island, moved into Brooklyn, from Brooklyn to attending Brooklyn Law School and starting off in the industry. One thing that I'm so proud of is I really started off as a retailer. So starting off in New York City at the World Trade Center after the first World Trade Center bombing back in '93, the idea was to open a small, tiny little store, which I did. And that was the beginning as a retailer. So from there, really learning about... Hey.
I think Rage just joined us.
The only problem with that is that, we would get into the bachata, the salsa, some grupero from Mexico. We're going to play the music because Drew Estate usually comes live with the music. Then you got to get it on target. But going back to the early days, starting off as a retailer, Scott gave me perception in terms of not just customer preferences, but where I felt connected to watching Carlito and his father, Carlos, release Opus X in front of my eyes. The very first night, the very first day of the tour, Opus X at the World Trade Center at Windows on the World, which I supplied their cigars. I was at the base of the building. There was something about that moment that made me see and understand the glory and the beauty of our industry. So as a retailer, moments like that, of which there were a few that I can hang my hat on that I was there to see and feel, allowed perspective and hope and dreams to start to materialize. Moving as a retailer and understanding what retailers go through, and their as a cigar retailer, understanding brands and being able to speak about them and market them within your store. And then from there, I became an independent rep So still in law school, I started to represent brands. The first one, and the one I think I was most proud of, was my relationship with Nick Perdomo and representing the Perdomo brand for 15 states in the United States, which for those of you out there who you know, have friends who are representatives or who've done the job, representing 15 states in the United States is a lot. So I really got to learn a lot there, and representing Tarano for 50 states, actually, which is insane, and other brands, and being involved in the magazine, South Florida Smoker, New York Smoker, Chicago Smoker, and tying them together into one brand. I got to see things from perspectives that allowed me to, while I developed my own brand at the time prior to moving to Nicaragua. So there was a lot of learnings and struggle prior to me moving to Nicaragua. And in moving there, I would go with Nick Perdomo. Nick had a factory at 7111 Flagler Street in Miami, where he made all of his cigars. And then the father, R.I.P., Nick Perdomo Sr., he moved to Nicaragua, and he took a small billiard hall, and from there was their birth in Nicaragua. So going to Nicaragua 6 times a year with Nick for a couple of years before moving there kind of was my entrance into the country. And, you know, experiencing it from that perspective, right? Because a lot of things that I work through are psychological or sociological, and thinking through how I was viewing things at the time. The cigar boom, which a lot of people do ask about my beginnings in the cigar industry, but very few people, Scott, actually ask about the cigar boom. So for those of you who don't know, the cigar market in the United States was crashing when I was really just getting into full swing. So what was happening in Nicaragua was very interesting. First of all, at that time in Nicaragua, people hid the fact that they had Nicaraguan cigars. Now people say, "Oh, where's your factory?" They're screaming, "I'm in Nicaragua," and they're pounding the chest. And, you know, in Nicaragua this, in Nicaragua that. Before it was like, "Oh, do you use Nicaraguan tobacco?" No, we don't use that. Meanwhile, there's containers shipping out to their factory in Dominican Republic or Cuba, wherever they're shipping it. So, you know, Nicaragua was this like best kept secret. That's what Nicaragua was about. So our philosophy from day one, once we turned that page, you had the cigar boom was crashing, and everybody was going out of business. Banks were reclaiming tobacco. I mean, I was able to get cigar molds for nothing. Literally, they would hand them to me, or a tobacco that would cost $4 or $5 a pound, I was buying for $2, $2.50 from the banks. So while this crash was happening in the cigar boom, Nicaragua was heavily impacted, as well at the same time Nicaragua was being underrepresented because it was the best kept secret that you didn't want to talk about Nicaragua. And at the time, the Dominican cigars would sell somewhere from, when I first started, 100 Dominicans to 1 Nicaraguan. Maybe at that point it was 95 Dominicans to 1 Nicaragua. So there was no shining star of Nicaragua other than one thing: the tobacco and the culture. So those things were behind the surface. And I think one of the early things that Drew Estate was able to do was we were able to help the Nicaraguan manufacturers, believe it or not, with Padron, with Hoya, with all the fancy footworks of all these guys, the Oliva, Nick, everybody, Plasencia. These guys are giants and beasts, and who I really respect. Kiki Berger at the time. There was a tremendous amount of great cigar manufacturers there, but it was really Drew Estate who really, in my opinion anyway, who really at that time when the crash was happening, was to rally the Nicaraguan manufacturers into this position of really representing Nicaragua and supporting each other, which we always did on a basis of, if you ran out of tobacco or if you needed something or you needed to do something, we'd help each other. But there was never this pride. So those things came together, and you had some of the you know, the Cuban families who were founding members of the Nicaraguan tobacco community, were very, very warm to us and treated us very well. They, me personally, I was El Gringo Loco to Orlando, which is, you know, George Padron's dad, and obviously one of the patriarchs of Nicaraguan tobacco, and you had, you know, tremendous people. Tricky Bermejo, who ran the Natsa factory, which was the largest factory in Nicaragua at the time, making close to 100,000 sticks a day. They even got over to 110 at some point. And you had Plasencia. So you had all these greats, and some of these families went back 4, 5, 6 generations, if not further, into Cuba and Spain, and being part of the tobacco from the cultivation standpoint, or farming, or even distribution, or even mid-level style tobacco dealers. Tobacco was in their veins. And here comes this gringo from New York, completely out of his mind, and walking around like a homeless dude with a little snub nose in my pocket and nowhere to live. And I was sleeping on the floor for the first couple of years, basically on what's called a rollout, where you roll out your bed and then later on you roll it back and you tuck it in the vehicle. So, you know, I was kind of seen as an interesting individual, and they liked me, and I really was blessed by that, because it's part of the story. So in regard to your question, there were all those things happening at the same time. The boom was crashing. People were losing their businesses, a lot of pain and suffering from people who tried. You had the materialization of Nicaragua becoming this sacred Mecca, and starting what I labeled, without question, was Nicaragua becoming the new Mecca of cigars, and always saying, like, hey, my positioning was, Drew Estate's not about Cuba. We're not trying to be the next best thing to Cuban cigars. Cuban cigars are great. Cuban tobacco is exceptional. No one could ever question that. But as well as Cuban seed, when you start to break it down from the standpoint of Cuban seed tobaccos, Pilato Cubano, with the pilot bringing to Dominican Republic, however you want to look at seed variety and the seed production in Cuba, as well as the country of origin in terms of where you're going to grow that tobacco, Cuba is important. But Drew Estate was the antithesis to that. Our entire basis was about, we are something different. We are New York centric. We are Nicaraguan centric. And that feel that we brought was really the older Cuban guys. They vibed out on it. They were very appreciative of it, and they helped us. And so the city of Esteli was also the amazing thing. We were the thing that should not be Drew Estate. I didn't speak Spanish. And we started off with 7 people. And as we grew from 7 people to 20 people the next year, to 45 people, and grew from 1 factory to 2 factories to 5 to 10 to ultimately 11 factories before we decided to invest into La Gran Fábrica, Drew Estate. During that period, it was really all of this culmination of timing, and so it was quite a journey, Scott, and I like to think about that and balance that a lot in terms of where we are today, and with a lot of the progress that we've made as a company and as an industry and as a country in Nicaragua, and be able to juxtapose back and forth between those two sides, and it really allows a person to have a glimpse into, you know, into a really beautiful story and a romantic story about Drew Estate that extends well beyond myself, and how we've been able to influence a country. How did Drew Estate influence Nicaragua? That was, you know, all of that really comes down to, how did Nicaragua influence us, and how did that balance take place? So
it's an easy place to fall in love with, though, Jonathan. See, I was going to call you Jonathan all night, regardless what I asked you at the beginning.
Call me whatever you want.
But I know, well, I will.
Just call me late to lunch.
But it's such an easy country to fall in love with, isn't it? With the people. And it's about the people, I think. Yeah,
I mean, you're a good-hearted man. You know, we've spent good times over the years and got to know each other. But this last trip that we did together in your neck of the woods, I really got to understand a lot more about behind the surface of the man behind the man. And you know, you're a good-hearted person. And when you're in Nicaragua, when you're that kind of person, when you're in Dominican Republic or Mexico, Brazil, and you're up in the north areas, you know, and then the tobacco growing regions are usually these agricultural areas. So and we'll get into that at some point, and don't let us forget in the agricultural space. But from the standpoint of the people, is in Nicaragua, there is I lived there full-time for 14 years. So I didn't just come to the factory once a month and stay there for, a couple of days, or some of these guys would say, I stay for a week, a month. I mean, I lived, the first 6 years, I really didn't come home other than for our big trade show and a few times. Then the next 8 years, I lived there over 300 days a year. I married a Nicaraguan beautiful woman and built a house and became part of the franchise of Esteli as well as Managua, of which I spent pretty much every weekend as well. And in altogether 19 years of living there, but 14 full time. And the people of Nicaragua, they know how to smile and love and dance and help each other. And foreigners who came down, I got stuck in my car one day and nervous. It wasn't even my car, it was a rented car with a huge dent. And I got stuck in the mud. And I'm in the car, and all of a sudden these kids, I mean, they could have been 20, 19, 18, whatever. I see them kind of like coming towards my car. It's like 6 or 7 dudes. And I'm like, oh shit, it's about to go down. And Brooklyn starts registering. And I'm thinking about what I'm going to do. And all of a sudden they're pushing my car out of the mud, and the tires are shooting mud all over them. And I didn't even have money to be like, hey, listen guys, here's $10, $20. I was broke. So that's the most minor of ways of which the warm-hearted people in Nicaragua, and I think it says a lot about Spanish and Latin culture, and really Central American culture. When you think about Cuba, or you think about the Caribbean, or you think about the Dominican Republic and that side of the world, and its connectivity to Haiti and everything, then you think about Central America, Scott. Mm-hmm. And you've had dealings there, and Central America being obviously Nicaragua, Honduras, Costa Rica, El Salvador, Guatemala. There's a culture of that. Mexico is kind of and Panama. So, but the Five Sisters, go to El Salvador. I do, and mix and Honduras and there's and Costa Rica is so similar to Nica and Tica, right? Nicaraguan and Costa Rican, and there's this kind of like culture that is so unique and uplifting, and I think that part of the culture was something that Alejandro Martinez Cuenca, Glenn and I were talking the other day, my boss and our CEO of the company at Drew Estate, who's with us tonight, him and I were talking the other day about, some of the reasons why Alejandro had chosen Drew Estate to be their distribution partner. And we're more than that, but we're the partner in the United States representing the brand, and why he chose us, why he chose us. And these are things we're really proud about. And in talking tonight for you guys about that, these are things we can hang our hat on, because when you admire a man like Alejandro, the way I do and the way Glenn does, and Fawn and Joe Grow and Mac and David and our team, when you admire Alejandro and his son Juan, who's now president, and you think about that company, our head guy at our factory at the production floor level, so we have hundreds and hundreds of rollers, right? The guy who actually manages that space, Luis, he worked 10, 12 years at Hoya. Yes,
they call it the university, don't they? University of Tobacco, the Hoya de Nicaragua.
Yeah, they do, and from a tobacco standpoint is one thing, but from a manufacturing standpoint is another. And I would just switch that just a little bit from my perspective in terms of Hoya and their contribution to the industry overall, more specifically to Drew Estate as being part of us. Their DNA is in us, and I would say less from a tobacco standpoint, but more from a manufacturing standpoint, which is where we hang our hat. We're not a farmer; we don't own farms. Let me rewind. We are farmers, but we don't own the farms. That makes us similar to Hoya. They have their own farm now, and a beautiful farm up in the valley in Jalapa. But from a standpoint of that connectivity there, Hoya was able to see early on, when we first created the Cigar Guild, which was all the manufacturers in Nicaragua of premium cigars coming together, and growers coming together to accomplish certain goals that we had as an organization. it was then when Alejandro started to really think and see how Drew Estate operates. We're a very paternalistic company in Nicaragua. By paternalistic, I mean the way we give insurance. We have insurance that if someone should die, we have so many thousands of people who work at the factory that, you have every age. You have 22-year-olds all the way up to 70-year-olds, and I'm making that number. It could be 80. I don't know the exact numbers, but there are people who are older. And if we give life insurance or have medical facilities, we have a lot of programs for our people as a paternalistic company and a socially responsible company. But we're engaged in our community, engaged in your community. Because to me, the New Yorker in me will break it down like this: if I'm thinking about our street, our block, this is our space, this is where we live, this is our block. And that block needs to be identified, it needs to be protected, it needs to be honored. And when I think about our neighborhood in Nicaragua, from a standpoint of, you think about Managua, the capital, Estelí is the second biggest city in the country with about 100,000 people who live there, 140,000 people who work there. You think about Central, where Padron is, where we used to have our 11 factories. Then our barrio is called Rosario, which is a huge area of Estelí. We're inside that barrio called Oscar Gomez, and in our neighborhood, we went out of our way with a factory our size, and we continue to this day, which I'm so proud of. That's one of the things that I love about our company, about Drew Estate, about our entire Swisher organization, is the way that we honor our neighborhood. Our barrio means something to us, and the way we honor our neighborhood is investing into the neighborhood the right way. So by taking thousands of people who work in our factory, you'd say, well, we're going to sell soda, we're going to have vending machines, we're going to have restaurants. We can make thousands per day, thousands. And from day one to this day, we've let the neighborhood develop, let them open the restaurants, let them open the businesses, let them make the money around us. It increased the property value, it increased the pride, it increased our workers, our employees, our family in Nicaragua who work at the factory. Their mother has a little pulperia, una bodega, a small place to be able to sell a Coca-Cola or Alka-Seltzer, right? How many fucking Alka-Seltzer signs do you see in Nicaragua? So dudes must be eating something wrong. So, when you add all those things together, the complexities, at the same time, the simplicities allow us to flourish with our neighborhood, with our city, and the strength of our militia. Our little, I hate to use a word like that, but the strength of our home becomes so much richer, and that philosophy continues to this day, and that's something to be very proud of.
Well, you should be proud, Jonathan. Some of the things you've created in your factory, in the buses, the medical center, even the bridge over the River Kwai, as I call it, is amazing. It's a great story. Tell the story of the bridge.
Yeah, the bridge. So the bridge, and it's funny you bring this up, and this was why I think
because I've been there, because I've seen it. Yeah.
Yeah, but I'm saying I think this is why our last trip meant so much to me, Scott, because I didn't just really get to know our distributor or partner. I really made a friend, and those are the kind of questions that we appreciate from the Drew Estate side, and I appreciate personally is, when you really look at our logo as Drew Estate, the tobacco company, La Gran Fabrica, Drew Estate, our logo, our iconic, the way Padron has their hammer. I watched them develop that after us. It was interesting, right? We developed our logo in terms of the bridge, the Manhattan Bridge, and what it represents to us. So it's funny that you ask about the bridge in Estelí. Mm-hmm. So when you think about central Estelí, the center of the town, we had a problem because we had our 11 factories all spread out. So Rubio, me, Chino, Yesenia, the whole crew, and for those of you who've been to Nicaragua, you know these guys because in Cigar Safari we let everybody know our people. We were running around crazy from one factory to the other factory, from a production floor to a packaging place to a cool room, cuarto frios, to the areas where we would store material, and we were going nuts. And we didn't really have theft. Any of this stuff, if they steal stuff in Nicaragua, that's all bullshit. Who's ever saying that's just don't even listen to those people, but because there's almost no stealing. And the issue was the amount of moving around. So when we moved to Rosario, into Ascogome, our neighborhood, we had such a problem because all of our employees were in Central. And just like in 2002, when we blew up the factory and we made the front cover of La Prensa, the Nicaraguan newspaper, you know, we had to let all of the employees go and rebuild. We went to the government the same way. And we said, hey, we have a problem. Our employees can't physically get from Central over because the one bridge that would go from Central into Rosario, that goes by Placencias and Perdomo and Pepin, and that one bridge there, when the water floods, it goes over the top. So when you're driving your truck or your car or your camioneta, whatever you got, when you drive over that bridge, it feels like you are Moses or something driving over the rivers because you can't see the ground. So there would be these little bricks on the sides of you left and right, and you would drive your car over this, but you were literally driving through a river, and then you'd look off the sides and you would fall down 50 feet. It was horrible. So we really had a lot of concern about our safety of our employees and how they'd even get to work and the whole thing. So, you know, our city, Esteli, the Alcaldía, they came in and they built us a bridge, and which for us, you know, that's about $1 million or so back in 2005. And when you think about that, you know, they built us a bridge, and just that alone is beautiful. But the fact that they built us, you know, then you connect it to our logo, which is part of our ethos in the bridge, in the rebirth of cigars and bridging. There was a lot of symbolism there for us. So, you know, again, that's a building block and a piece, that moment when they built the bridge. And do you remember when you'd come over that bridge, there was one of the walls was graffitied up because, you know, all of Esteli is graffiti everywhere because we brought that. There were, we have about 50 full-time graffiti artists to this day who work at Subculture Studios. So, you know, we have people out there who are trying to oppose us now from a graffiti standpoint, but we're too strong.
I know. Right, Jonathan, what we're going to do is we're going to take a glass of water, because what we're going to do, Joe, could you show us a video? What I want to do is show everyone what you've just been talking about, and then we'll come back and get into the techie stuff, okay? So, Joe, wherever you are in the room.
Unmute. All right, everybody can see my screen, so I'm going to kick this up, and here we go.
Wow.
There we go.
So Johnathan, how proud do you feel watching that, sir?
Yeah, I think that we definitely have a lot of pride watching that, and I think the industry has some pride in us just in watching it as well. So thank you for showing that. That's cool. It's the first time I saw that, actually, that in the full clip of that. I saw a piece or two of it. So it's cool.
I mean, the rolling room, I remember, is there anybody against bad language in the room? But I remember the first time I walked into the rolling room, and you just kind of, and you know, little Henry, he gets his speaker, he's got his portable speaker that he carries with him, and he's slowly turning the music up, and you're thinking, what a pain in the arse. You know, what is happening here, you know? And then you walk into the rolling room, and what you saw in that video is what you see. And it's just a shame we couldn't have gone there live, obviously, because of the lockdown. Because to see 800, is it 800 people or 800 pairs? Like 1 million people.
Yeah, it's 800 people are in that one salon, the main rolling salon.
It's just incredible. But the thing is, it doesn't matter what you do with your phone to try and take a video or a panoramic picture. You can't capture the room because it's just unbelievable. Is that the biggest rolling room in the world? Or it's damn sight close to? It must be.
Yeah. So first of all, just when you think about the main salon at the factory, you know, when you talk about 800 people, 900, whatever it is now, that's the people who are actually rolling cigars with the red shirts.
Yeah.
But then what you'll notice is a lot of people with blue aprons on too, and those are supervisors. And we have the highest per capita supervisor. We have a tremendous amount of supervisors because we're not overly committed to the machinery side in terms of a lot of that. We really believe in the hands-on approach. So you have those additional people, and then some of the in the clip there, some of the pieces that really made me smile actually was some of the rooms that surround the Grand Salon that are still open in part of it, not secret rooms or back rooms of storage or back rooms or packaging facility, which is the other side of the building. All of those areas that connect to it, like quality control or the room that we roll the Liga Privada in, it's intense. So when you walk in as a guest to La Gran Fabrica, let's say if you're on Cigar Safari, which is our 3-night 40 Nicaraguan program, and you come on that trip, when we walk people to this main salon and you feel that presence and the sound of the chavetas clinking and clacking and the music that we'll have on, usually bachata or some reggaeton, and the energy and the frenetic, that vibe, that energy, you vibe. And it's, some people can't even look when they're standing there and they're looking forward. I always say, all right, everybody, line them up. And we line up the gringos and we make them look all at the entire room. And some people can't do it. It's intense because there's thousands of eyes looking back at you and they're smiling. So it breaks down the barrier a little bit, but it's an intense moment for our visitors. And that's why I fight with these guys at the fact. I fight with Henry. I fight with Pedro. I fight with all these guys because I always say the way you do your tour is you bring them first to the main salon to feel that, and then you double back and bring them to the pilons, and they go, no, and Willie and Henry and those guys, they like to bring them like through the process where they start off first. We're going to take you from the first step to the last step. We'll start at the farm, and then we'll go to pre-industry and look at the pilons, and we'll go from there to here to there, up to this Bahio where they're deveining, all the way to the factory. I say, no, blow up their brain box right away, and then double back and show them all the back. You know, it's Pulp Fiction for me. We're going to start in the middle of the end and come back, huh?
I'm with Henry on this one, if I'm honest, because the build-up is just incredible. I mean, what's great is he takes us into this little administration office with like 2-3 people, and we're all kind of standing there wondering, what are these guys doing? I'm making sure my bill's not there, or I'm making sure it's been paid, first and foremost. And then the next thing, he takes us through this door. It's not a massive doorway, you know? When you just walk in, it's just incredible. But to become the roller, how much training, Johnathan? Do they start at like the back of the room and work their way to the front? and then go off to the Liga Privada, or how does it work with you guys?
Yeah, so that's a very interesting question, and for us, I think it's there's a certain amount of factories in Nicaragua who take various different approaches. The approach that we've always chartered was training, and that's very expensive, Scott. It's something we've always believed in. Nestor used to laugh at us and say, "You guys are crazy," and this and that, and he does it too a little bit. But what we'll do is we like training people from scratch. So, Drew Estate, we pay our employees very well. I used to say, we pay more than everybody else, and whether that's true or not, I'll just tell you this, which it's not important because I don't want us to brag or anything, but a lot of people, rollers and people want to work at Drew Estate. We're one of the factories that really are desirable to work at. So you want to keep good relationships with all of the other manufacturers. So there's some degree of competition all between us, and we do sometimes hire a great employee who left for whatever reason, one factory or the other, just like they've left ours. But what we really prefer and what we really practice to this day quite well is training rollers from scratch. So we'd like to get rollers who are not influenced in techniques that we don't believe in. When you roll a cigar, you can take a cigar and you can bunch a cigar. Some people roll in tubes where they'll roll tobacco up like this, creating a tube in the cigar that's called entubano, and you're going to have a cigar that's rolled up like this. Other people, the way, essentially I like to roll this way, and our factories where we roll in an accordion fashion. So we'll create a tube structure, an airflow structure that allows you to have that accordion, and that accordion shape allows you to get air passage and airflow in a different way. So there's when you think about leaf placement and leaf construction, there's various schools, and they're all good. It's what works best for you and what you're looking to achieve. For us, we start them off from scratch and train them, and they go for their first 6 months where they start to finally roll just very few cigars. So if you want a roller to be able to roll 200, 300, 400 cigars a day, meaning prepare, and what we say a roller, just to be clear, you have what's called banchero and rolera. Okay, so some cultures, Honduras, for instance, all of your cigar rollers will go in one room. All of your bancheras will go in another room. They don't even work together in teams. Nicaragua, the culture is that your banchero and your rolera sit next to each other. They work together as a team. So when we're training them, what we want to do is be able to get them to start off where they're making, 20 or 30 cigars a day, and get them into the flow. And we don't put them in the back anymore. We earlier on, we did that. They would sit towards the back of the salon area, the grand salon. But what we've done now is the old cafeteria, which we've knocked that wall down, replaced it, took the damn wall down again so many times. That's been built out and moved back and stuff. So wherever they are positioned, it's not because of clout. It's because of what makes more sense from putting them together to be able to manage them. And that process really takes a couple of years before they really get to be exceptional rollers. Forget about becoming a Liga Privada roller. You're not going to get there. Don't even waste your time, unless you're really one of these heavy dreamers and you're really all about it. So in Cuba, they have these grade 7 rollers who really are masters of their class and their skill set, and some of the different factories have different ways of looking at it. For us, being able to be really good at rolling a single size allows us to find efficiencies on the factory floor. Finding efficiencies on the factory floor allows us to keep our price points in check. You got what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. With that, you're able to, so for us, the way we do things is there's a logic behind it. It's not just about saying, we can roll more cigars a day per banchera and rolera and banchero if we have them make one size. So a guy who makes a torpedo, you know what he makes, Scott? A torpedo. A guy who makes a robusto makes a robusto. And that allows us to find those efficiencies, which are really important when you think about how to keep your costs down in an environment where costs are going up.
It's also good for quality control as well. So in a day, what are you guys making? 130, 140,000 cigars, handmade cigars a day?
Yeah, that number changes a lot because...
That's why I said 2.
Yeah. No, that number changes a lot, and really, to give an honest answer, it's not like a set number. It can go anywhere from 140,000 to 165,000 cigars a day, depending on what we're rolling, depending on the month, depending on the time of the year. You know, sometimes we're rolling during the year to be able to stockpile some cigars. What we roll in January, February, and March is more than what we need. And in July and June and July and August, in those months, you know, you're rolling desperately rolling as many as you can because you're behind and you can't catch up. So what the real goal is, it's about whether you're a smaller factory. When you think of a large factory, right? Small, medium, large. To me, a small factory can be not a fabriquita, a factory that's got 2 or 3 people in it. Once you get into a little bit, a small factory can make like 10,000 cigars a day, 5,000 to 10,000 cigars a day. That's a factory. You're producing cigars, no joke. And then at 30, 35,000, 40,000 cigars a day, you're already a monster. And then there's this like super user, mega monster size factory. And that's a whole discussion in and of itself in how to lose your soul there, and how Drew Estate's been able to maintain our soul in being such a large factory and still being a cult brand and a boutique company, while we're being this huge overgrown thing. It's not so much about how many cigars that you roll a day. It's about how you maintain your quality every day.
Yeah. Because I reckon, I was looking at the figures, and Nicaragua's overtaken the Dominican Republic now, I think, for the first time in the last year or so. So I reckon you guys must be sending out 1 in 5 of every Nicaraguan cigar now.
Yeah, well, that's not enough. We should do better.
But then I took it a step further, Jonathan, to try and work out what would be your global market share. You worked that out?
Man.
I'll give you an idea. I have. But it might not be right, okay? I reckon Drew Estate have got about 8% of the global market share.
Wow.
Which is pretty cool. And you make there's 95 million cigars made in Cuba. And I reckon you guys must be doing roughly 40 million-ish handmade cigars a year. So you're almost to half the size of Cuba. There you go. That puts it into perspective for me.
That's
so
incredible.
Imagine that little seed, yeah? That tiny little seed in the 90s.
Yeah.
Incredible.
Yeah, we have a lot to be thankful for, you know, and something that I've always learned from these tobacco greats, and, you know, you're a tobacco great because it's not just that you're a tobacco man is one piece of it, but whether you're a tobacco historian or whether you're a believer who's all in and you've put everything of your life into it, meaning, you know, of course, kids and family and stuff aside, meaning your passion as your hobby, as your lifestyle, as your business. One thing that we've always talked about, and I hear it so much that sometimes I used to say, that's full of shit. You know, like they say, oh, we're all students in tobacco. People who are really in tobacco are all students, and listening to your numbers and your perspective of where we live in the ecosystem of cigars and of the ecosystem of tobacco, right? Whether it's premium cigars, non-premium cigars, mass market cigars, all the way down the line, down the food chain. You know, you learn every day in the business, and you just taught me something. I didn't know that.
Well, there you go. I'm glad I've taught you something, Jonathan. So, okay, you probably don't like talking about Liga Privada. What I should do, and I apologize, what I didn't do was what I should have done at the very beginning is asked you, Jonathan, to talk through the 3 cigars that the guys are smoking merrily away. We're nearly an hour in, and hands up, because I guess you will be almost finished your first cigar. So we're smoking the Undercrown. So we've got all 3 in the pack. So I guess the guys between them are choosing which one they prefer to smoke. Can you give us a background to the cigar and the blend, if you can? Just tell us a little bit about it, please.
Yeah, my pleasure. I think actually on the line we also have here, is Fawn still on with us? Is on Fon, our senior brand manager, on with us? I'd love for Scott. I'd love if Fon is with us, for him to speak for a moment on the size. If he's not, I'll gladly speak on it. You see, on Fon.
I think you need to hop into a different meeting. So why don't you take it?
Okay. Yeah. Well, and I appreciate all the questions. Don't think that I don't want to. Don't enjoy talking about stuff. I do. I get super excited But let's see, the Undercrown brand, you guys who are enjoying them, smoking them today, you got the blue label is a San Andreas wrapped cigar. And that one, I find that a lot of people see a Maduro, a heavy leaf material, and they get nervous. Oh, this is going to be super strong, or it's going to be aggressive. And, you know, you have to ask yourself what you're looking for in a cigar, and where you're looking for that journey to begin and then go to and then end. And end meaning, you know, where's the finish? Where do you want to take it to? There's one time while you're smoking, there's the actual puff. And in that one puff, that singular puff on a cigar, that's where you're going to have the depth of the cigar. That's very different than when people use the word complexity. The complexity of the cigar for me is the journey that it takes you on from the starting of the cigar. Oh, it's sweet. Oh, it's butternut squash. It's leather flying chairs, whatever you're into. And then the journey, it takes you that path and where it goes to an hour later or wherever. So there's a difference between the depth of the smoke on a singular puff versus the complexity of that journey throughout. And the Maduro is what I call a heavy leaf tobacco. So when you're looking at the blue label, which is a Maduro cigar, you think of darks and brights. And a dark cigar being a Mexican San Andreas, a Connecticut broadleaf, a T52 Habano seed, a Brazilian Matafina. Those are heavy leaf tobaccos. And then when you think of brights, you're thinking more of an Indonesian tobacco. A lot of the cigars that a lot of the Europeans for many years, you know, they love that Brazil, Cuba, Indonesia blend kind of thing. And a wrapper that's a high level, really delicious Sumatra, or an Indonesian, a Bazuki or Java. Those are more bright tobaccos, Connecticut shade, bright. There's nothing bright about the blue label Undercrown. That is a meaty, beefy stick. It's got a lot of depth to it in the pull, and it's got complexity to it in the journey. So that's that cigar, that kind of, for me, it kind of encapsulates the blue label. It's a medium plus. For some people, it's just under full. But this cigar, unlike Liga Privada, in my opinion, you know, this cigar is more of a balanced cigar, where I find Liga to be much less balanced. This is a very balanced cigar. It's got balance to it that you're getting the sweet, you're getting the cream, you're getting the nut, the nutmeg and the leather. So it gives you, and I hate to use those, you know, those words, but that balance to the Maduro is there. Turn the page to the second release in the Undercrown brand was our Connecticut, which is the white label. And the Undercrown Connecticut is a Connecticut shade cigar. So we call it Undercrown Shade, which is an interesting name because just that was a cool name we developed. And I believe Joey came up with as a fresh name. And you guys understand when I talk about darks and brights, the Connecticut shade tobacco or shade variety style leaf is going to be a bright. But the shade is that way for a reason. You know, that tobacco was grown under cheesecloth. So if you guys know what that is, when you're driving past a tobacco farm or you see it in a video somewhere and you see that tobacco that's underneath that cloth, that's blocking the sun. So it's not getting that direct sunlight. And why you do that as a farmer is one thing. And how that affects your tobacco is another thing. And then how that actually affects the taste of the tobacco before it's processed and after it's processed is a third thing. So when you think of Connecticut shade tobacco that's grown in Connecticut, it's grown under cheesecloth. But in the Connecticut River, in the Connecticut Valley, in the Ecuador Valley where we grow the tobacco, you don't need cheesecloth. It's grown under, the cloud covering is so dense is so dense that when the sun tries to shine through, the natural cloud covering is your shade. So it's not grown under cheesecloth. And the brightness of the tobacco it's not bitter. Some Connecticut shade tobaccos are bitter because they're overly bright. They interestingly, not overly bitter in a bad way, just have that component to it. The Undercrown Shade White Label is a heavy Connecticut cigar. So for most people who are looking for that real super mild, I wouldn't say no taste, but for that super mild Connecticut, this is not your cigar. This is a cigar that's got body to it. This cigar was blended in a manner to have a vivid expression, but also be weighted. It is a weighted blend, so it still has that meatiness to it, that kind of that earth quality to it, an earthiness to it. So your the Connecticut shade includes Ecuador in the blend on the cover leaf as opposed to Mexico. And also a big variety of sizes. So for those of you like the smaller ring gauge, you'll find it all the way up to the larger. And then, of course, more recently, we released the Sun-Grown. And what you guys are going to experience when you smoke that stick, Sun-Grown is an interesting word, and it means a lot it means different things to different people. You know, what I've talked to you guys always about is seed variety, country of origin, and processing. Those are the 3 touch points that we always need to think about. And from a seed variety standpoint, when people talk about Ecuador, historically, they've always talked about 3 different wrappers: Connecticut Shade, Sumatra, and now more recently Habano. And this tobacco in the Sun-Grown is what's considered is a Habano seed. There's no sun-grown seed. It's a Habano seed, which is a Cuban seed. It's a Habano seed that is grown in Ecuador. And when you talk about the sun-grown, obviously that's not grown under cheesecloth, or it still is grown under the cloud covering in Ecuador, because that's going to be you can't tell the clouds not to come out. But it's a brighter tobacco, and it's a little bit more robust. So it's a little richer. It's definitely a little more spicy, and it has more of a Cubanesque taste to it. So it certainly is not a Cuban tasting cigar because we don't use Cuban tobacco. But the Sun-Grown is an interesting blend. Not as heavy and strong as the Maduro, but significantly it's not even that much stronger than the Connecticut Shade. It's just different. So the taste is good. And again, all 3 of these cigars, you should be getting a very balanced approach. You know, when people talk about booze, when they talk about whiskey and brown spirits, I often hear people talk about the word smooth, right? They say, "Oh, this is so smooth," and that really is important in the spirits world, and in the premium leaf business and the cigar world. People really love a smooth cigar. They want a smooth experience. They don't want something aggressive. They don't want something but I kind of I've always taken the opposite approach. So when you juxtapose Liga Privada against Undercrown, in my opinion, because everybody has their own opinions, and you know what they're worth half the time. So Liga Privada, that is an aggressive cigar. That's a cigar that's not exactly meant to be smooth. When you age it and age and age, it becomes smoother over time. But that cigar is really juxtaposed against the Undercrown. And I won't go too deep into it, but everything doesn't live in a vacuum, Scott. So Undercrown has a brand componentry to it that's not just, oh, the band is the same every time, but it also lives within the Drew Estate portfolio of brands. And the Undercrown is there for a reason. When we released Liga Privada in 2007, as we brought that cigar forward, we went 4 years without releasing another cigar. Scott, that's incredible. People release brand after brand. They forgot which brand they released last because they're releasing so many brands of cigars all day long. Mm-hmm. We waited 4 years to release a follow-up to Liga Privada because we were like, whoa, what's going on here with this cigar? we figuring something out over here. And we needed to really dig deeper into that brand, into the Connecticut River Valley, and really get a firm understanding of ourselves and that brand and that cigar before moving into Undercrown. So think about it like this, ready? If every year you're going to come out with a new brand, every year you got that new thing, and you don't do it. You hold off. You go, oh my God, I got so many ideas. I got graffiti artists talking shit in one ear and blenders in the other ear. The people are giving me, oh my God. And then you go a second year. Think of how many things are raging in your brain that you need to be producing. And you don't do it. And you do it a third year, and then 4 years go by. Let me tell you something. The bar for Undercrown at our company was high. The bar was high, and the numbers, because in my own interesting way, I can't add and multiply and stuff. Glenn's going to laugh. But, for some reason, I'm in touch with the numbers. It's an imaginary, craziest thing. And people have responded to this brand globally, Undercrown, because before Cigar One was made, 4 years of pain and torture went into the creating that brand, from a psychological, from blending, from reblending and reblending. People say, I took 20 years to make this. I did 6 months, 8 months, 9 months. It took 2 weeks in making a blend. This damn blend took 4 years, and we were all pissed off at each other. The production guy is fighting with the quality control guy. All sorts of whatnots was going on. So this brand is a culmination of, so when you look at Maduro, the Connecticut, the shade, excuse me, and then the sun-grown, it's 3 different expressions all under one flag. So you're going to have some connectivity between those tobaccos, because as you guys know, when you take a plant, I always talk about vertical blending and horizontal blending. When you take a plant and you're pulling a seco leaf from the bottom, or a viso from the middle, or a ligero leaf from the top, as you work towards the corona of the plant, the top of the plant, when you buy a plant, you say to a farmer, I'm going to buy all those plants from you. You need to use all of those plants. You can't just say, oh, I'm going to pull the ligero out of every leaf, because then our man Glenn, CEO, here's going to call us up and say, the CFO's going crazy. You got to use up these leaves. We have this inventory. What are you doing? So we have to think years and years and years ahead of time to be able to plan our leaf usage correctly. Undercrown is part of our ecosystem. Liga Privada is part of our ecosystem. Herrera Esteli is part of our ecosystem, and they all have some type of relative connectivity, but those connectivities are further apart. When you start getting to Liga Privada, Undercrown, and Nica Rustica, those connectivities are closer. And then within the Undercrown brand in and of itself, what I want you to do is to be able to taste the nuances of the Maduro, the shade, and the sun-grown. Taste the things that are similar. Taste the things that are different, not just the differences. And as you do that through those 3 blends, I always tell people, listen, don't smoke one cigar and be like, hey, my decision about this Hoya de Nicaragua, this Drew Estate stick, whatever it is, Undercrown, Connecticut, my decision. Your decision is bullshit. You need to smoke 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 cigars and really understand the tobacco, understand the leaf. So it's something that you have to smoke at different times, a few times after a different meal, with a different beverage, whether it's coffee, whether it's, a rum. And then you're able to really start understanding what you have and the work and the passion behind it. So it's a complex answer. I don't know if I went overboard.
No, it was a great answer, Jonathan, as always. And one of the things that fascinates me is where you came up with some of your names for your vitolas. You've got some crackers, like the Flying Pig, and then I remember seeing in Nicaragua the egg. And I still don't know how you smoke that, if you do smoke that, or if it's just a decoration. But where do the Flying Pigs come from? Where'd you get the inspiration for the names of the vitolas? And
yeah, well, go back to egg for a second. For those of you who don't have an egg, good luck. Try to get one, because we can only make about 50, 60, 70 of those suckers a day, and sometimes we don't even make them. It's a big pain in the ass. But if you ever have heard of the egg, or you click it into your little interweb, you can look for Drew Estate egg, or it was under the Natural brand, or Laritan, or whatever you call it. that's a very interesting cigar. And it was interesting before cigars became interesting. So it was, or you know what I mean by that, cigars have always been interesting for thousands of years, way before Drew Estate. But from a standpoint of, it looks like this egg with these two little arms that come out of it, and it's a crazy thing. In the year we released it, so many of the greats who've passed away, Scott, so many of them were standing in our little booth. We had one or two little booths actually at the time at a trade show, and they were laughing their ass off. Old man Padron, Estelo Padron, his brother over from Vilazon, and many. That cigar's crazy. And the way you smoke it, you cut both ends just like you smoke a regular stick, except the difference. Then you take a hole puncher and you punch a hole in the center of the egg. And then you hold it like this and you smoke it and the smoke comes out of the sides. I don't think it's something that many of the Europeans are going to do. It's probably, you know, more of a U.S. American kind of thing. But on the other hand, the flying pig and the feral flying pig, a lot of our European brothers and sisters really love that cigar. They truly, I can't tell you how many people in Europe on my events with you and other events that I've done throughout Europe, how many times they say, JD, this cigar is so good. And that always feels good to hear it, you know, and we get our fair share of people who have an issue every now and then, but the comments back on that stick have always been great. The flying pig, the name actually, I didn't create the name for that one, which is funny that you asked, one out of the zillion that I didn't come on. But the name is based on a very cool concept, and it had a lot to do with the early, in the United States and in New York specifically, the salesmen in New York were limited. So interesting when you think about the FDA now, in the sizes they were able to sell and the quantities of cigars that would be allowed to be packaged in a package. So who gives a shit if you have 20 sticks in a box or 100? And New York back in the day had these crazy requirements, crazy. And the flying pig was an old size. And Scott, think about what we do at Drew Estate, right? It's not like we invented stalk cutting. I told you guys about a plant. It goes up and down, and at the bottom you have the lighter leaf, your heavier leaf, and your strongest leaf at the top. When you prime the plant, you take the lighter leaf at the bottom. A couple of weeks later, and the time is right, you pull the middle, and then you pull the handle up at the top. So the stick kind of is bald, and then at the top of the leaf you'll have the plant. When you stalk cut, you're cutting the whole leaf at the bottom. You chop the whole leaf and hang the stalk in the barn and let it continue to age. We do that the best. We didn't invent it. It's been done for hundreds of years. When you think about Kentucky Fire Cured, what we do in smoking tobacco, we smoke that tobacco. We don't use heat, but we use smoke, putting that tobacco up in a curing barn and burning. The heat is so hot. I went into a curing barn, Scott. I can't even stay in a curing barn when they're burning for more than 4 or 5 seconds. My entire body becomes like paralyzed and you're overloaded with a suit on, with a whole suit. It's the processing. We didn't create that. It's been done for hundreds of years. But what we've done is our curiosity as a company, our curiosity as part of the culture has been to be able to work those tobaccos and look back historically and be able to then bring out the best and take it to the next step further. So Flying Pig, a lot of our expressions and our names, you know, in the acid brand, the acid name itself, or, you know, across the board, to me, a Robusto or a Toro are important names, and we have plenty of them because it's easy for identification purposes. But I've always enjoyed and had a lot of fun with names that make you think a little bit and make you think about what was the cigar manufacturer thinking about, and how does that name relate to where you should be landing when you're smoking that cigar, and that journey, right? Like as a kid, we eat our cereal. I mean, you still do it now. I guess if you eat cereal, you know, my friend Fritz Bossert eats oatmeal every day. And you look at, sometimes you look at the box while you're eating your cereal. You read the back of the box and you're looking at the box and it's Wheaties or whatever it is. And I think there's some connectivity to that when you're smoking a stick. And where does it take you on that journey? So the name should be part of that journey. It's very, very important. And we have a big, we have a big heart, but we have a very big imagination at Drew Estate. So we get inspiration through that.
What I'm going to do, Jonathan, I'm going to have a break from asking you a couple of questions. I mean, this is absolutely fascinating, and it's brilliant to actually. I feel like I'm sitting in the pub with you, just having a beer, which is lovely. With us, we have the Ricardo, who's the Deputy Ambassador to Nicaragua for the UK. So I think Ricardo would like to ask you a question, Johnathan.
Whoa.
Okay.
Great. Thank you. Thank you so much, Scott. It's great to see so much of you and connect so much of you with you in these days of Zoom world. Thank you, Mitch, for this great opportunity of giving us this privilege to have such a legend here with everyone. And I couldn't let this opportunity go, Johnathan, to join in, to learn and hear directly from you. I do have a small anecdote. Back a year ago, precisely, just a couple of days or so, we were both in a very, very special place. I think you were with your dad, and it was the home of the greatest king of Scotland, Robert the Bruce, in Broome Hall, and it was a fantastic event. And I only have one regret, and I really mean it, and I really regret not having the chance to catch you after that, to come and hear and introduce and hear more about you. It was such a crazy day, and we were so into the moment, hearing about the sword and the history, and it was fascinating. I learned a lot in that experience, but I do regret I didn't get a chance. But that's why today, hearing you, learning more about you, your philosophy, your story, and a couple of weeks ago, I was also very lucky to hear from Pedro, my Nicaraguan co-national, to hear his story, which is incredibly inspiring, not only for Nicaraguans, let alone young Nicaraguans, but anyone. But I think what's really, really exceptional, the comment I wanted to make today, there's a couple of things, and then I'll lead to a question, of course, is that how you've been able to enable people like Pedro, and above all, how grateful we are as Nicaraguans, because those of us who understand what you've done, what the industry has done, bringing this tradition that it was in our DNA, it was in our blood, it was there before the Spaniards came in, into something what it is today, and how proud I feel in my role when I go meet, diplomats, presidents, or anyone, that people know about my cigars more than anything about my country, and they will know about your brand. So it becomes something so special. And when we think, I'm a firm believer in archetypes and symbols, and yours is very special, and probably you know this, but those who don't, I wanted to comment on that, is the bridge, and why the bridge is so important. And if you look at it geographically, Nicaragua and the Isthmus of Central America, we are the bridge of the American continent. We are the ones connecting North America, if that's what you consider Mexico, all the way to Alaska, and then going from Colombia all the way to Tierra del Fuego in Argentina, South America. We were that space, that bridge that connected the two greatest cultures, the Aztecs, the Incas, and we were this crazy mix, and we are this crazy mix of people. And it's beautiful that New York in itself, it's just made up by these bridges between the islands. So if I think historically what you've achieved, and as this coming to a country that had the right conditions, and it's great to have the right conditions, but if a force of nature doesn't come in and do something with a vision and with the energy, the passion, and the love that you did, it wouldn't happen. Nothing of this will be happening now if you didn't have that energy coming in. And you build bridges, and that's what you've done. You built bridges, particularly when I think of United States and Nicaragua. It's a very complex history that we have in common. But you creating those bridges between the cultures, the peoples, incredible, interesting to know. You married a Nicaraguan. I married a Bostonian who studies from New York. So you see, that's how the world is and how the bridges are built in. So for building those bridges, is something that you can look back and share with that pride, and people should talk about this in the future. I know I will be talking more about it in the future. So for that, thank you, and I hope that what I see in the future is this is a great way to keep on building these bridges, economically, culturally, philosophically, exchanging ideas. There's nothing more beautiful than doing it with a cigar in the middle when we all come to the same level and do that. So for that, Johnathan, I'm incredibly grateful. And with that in mind, what leads to more of a broad question I want to get, but you've seen it, you were there, you were in the genesis when the cigar rebirth was happening, and you were part of it. Looking at the future and the bridges, like we can't keep on building. You know, if the conditions were right and things keep on with the momentum, what could be the potential for the next stage, the next milestone for Nicaragua? Do you think? I mean, what would be the next thing that we could do, or how big or how small, or what could be, if you think? I would love that the next bridge and the next chapter of Nicaraguan cigar stories, history, is this. Whether in Europe or the US, doesn't matter. I wonder if you could share. Maybe that's too much of a philosophical question for this forum, but I would love that. And again, I do hope that next time you come in, I do get a chance to chat with you and meet you more in person.
First of all, Ricardo, thank you so much for what you said in terms of thanking Drew Estate, and you know very deeply, as well as I do, that our gratitude back to Nicaragua, to the Segovias, to not just Esteli, but to Jinotega and Jalapa and Somoto, and the party in Somoto with the 2 stages, the 3 stages, and all of those pieces that built Drew Estate and gave us the inspiration. It wasn't just our city, which you know how proud we are about our city, our street, our block, the adoquin that we put on our street, and the government, we bought the adoquin, which is the bricks, and the government, the Alcaldía of Esteli, Pancho, they put the bricks down. For us, they took that expense. They did that so that the street could be easy for older people and people to walk on that street instead of walking on a dirt road, because we get 6 months, 7 months, 8 months of strong rain, and the rain will ruin your shoes and get you wet and you're cold at work and bother you, and they wanted the street to be good. That type of partnership in building the bridges, that's what's beautiful about your conversation, the piece of this, and I appreciate, Scott, having you as part of our team today in talking. So first thing back to you is thank you for recognizing that just the beautiful relationship between Drew Estate and Nicaragua. So secondly, in regard to our time that we did spend for a few minutes talking together, I do remember, and we spoke a little bit about Flor de Caña, which is another beautiful story that also, I always say, Joya de Nicaragua is Nicaragua, and in a way I feel the same for Flor de Caña, the national rum of Nicaragua, and the importance that rum plays in each of the Latin American countries and Central American countries in particular, and the Caribbean as well. So Drew Estate is earning that right to have DNA of Nicaragua, and us have some DNA given to Nicaragua, that exchange, that balance. In terms of your question specifically, that's one of the best questions. I've been in a bunch of interviews in my life, only recently doing these digital ones, and appreciative that we can still connect this way. But that was one of the most interesting questions I've ever had. And at first when you asked it, I said, oh shit, that's a good question. And I started to think internally, looking internal, in terms of Drew Estate, in terms of what's there now, and it's such a great question. And ultimately, as you're finishing up your question, without me having time to really think through this in a more philosophical way, I'll tell you for me, in terms of thinking about what the future could be in Nicaragua and the opportunity, your question was more geared towards tobacco in some way and stuff, but I think it's even broader than that. Really, what I vision for Nicaragua, and what I vision a technology hub, I vision healthcare hub, an area when you go to Holland and you go to Strijp, or you go and you're there in Eindhoven, and there is a technology hub. It is the old Philips, a tremendous facility when they moved from Eindhoven to Amsterdam, and that became a technology hub. You go to the valley here in California, whatever it's called, right? And there's a technology hub. Nicaragua is youth. There is a huge youth in Nicaragua, and they're brilliant kids. They're brilliant, and they're challenged, and there's pain, and there's sacrifice, and they think, and they come up with solutions to everything. And I can't wait during my lifetime to see a Nicaragua where we have a technology hub and we have a center for real development in medical advances. And this has nothing to do with the populace or the government or the political parties, none of that. This has to do with a people. And this has to do with progress. And when I've watched the progress of Nicaragua, for those of you who don't know, throughout the years, my 20 years in deep Nicaraguan, the depth I've taken of living my life in Nicaragua and committing to Nicaragua has been incredible to watch it go from the GDP of growth, tremendous growth, and so much advances have happened in the country. And looking at the positives and living in the positive, the next stages of positivity in Nicaragua are going to be beautiful, my brother, and they're going to be things that blow your mind. We talked a little earlier about agriculture. Agriculture, culture, subculture. How those things intertwine, and the counterculture and counterculture movement, and what it takes to be an antithesis to a constant. And Nicaragua is I feel in the early days with a tremendous, beautiful past, but is in the early days where we're going to go. There's going to be, man, I have so many. You know, your question really, it's alarming to me from a standpoint of, you know, one thing I could tell you is step by step, man. Every brick that we lay down, every adoquin that we lay down and build on top of each other, we build a wall. Those walls can be walls that divide us, or those walls can be walls that bridge us together, of pillars of strength, walls of strength. And what we do, what our obligation is at Drew Estate, what your obligation, a leader in Nicaragua, and a person who brings Nicaragua to the world. When the government came to us and said, we want to take your factory, Drew Estate, La Gran Fábrica Drew Estate, and we want to now put you on a video and be able to take this video and be playing in the back wherever the Nicaraguan syndicate goes to be able to represent Nicaragua at trade shows, to say, come invest in Nicaragua. Invest in Nicaragua. And to see Drew Estate as the chosen company playing on that video is, you know, that's our small brick on the wall that we've contributed to being able, from a social responsibility, from a social awareness, and the future. You said it, man. You can only glaze over it in a video program this long, but the history of Nicaragua and the role in that space, that connecting space, it's such an interesting country. It has so much turbulence, so much victory, so much surprises, so much depth to it that, you know, it never ceases to amaze me what the country has been through, what the people have been through, what they've overcome, and what they've accomplished. And the future is going to be it's a young country, so close also to the United States, close to Mexico, and so I don't know exactly, but I long to see all the next steps, and I hope that we continue to represent a brick on that wall, and so, you know, thank you also so much for coming today and being part of this call as well, brother, and I thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Drew. And I will just quickly end just by saying, next time you're here, I mean, I'd like to thank you for what you said. It gets me emotional, so I don't want to get emotional in front of all these brothers and sisters of the Leaf. But I do want to say that next time you're here, I took Pancho a couple of years ago to Esteli Parade, which is a street in Sheffield, which is a twin town with Sheffield here in the UK with Esteli. Which is where the first steam engine in the whole industrial revolution of the world started, by the River Don. And that's where a wall with a graffiti that says Esteli Parade. So next time, Scott, we need to take Johnathan to Sheffield and go see and take a moment to connect with that bridge of history too. But pleasure, and thank you so much, Robert. Appreciate it.
We need a cigar retailer to open a shop in Sheffield. So we do. Just looking down the questions, Jonathan, I think Peter's got a question for you about pairing. Okay, Peter?
Yeah, hello, Jonathan. Thank you very much for such an informative thing. It's been fantastic. Yeah, I thought I'd just bring kind of a few different things. I love kind of like pairing stuff. So I've got a few different things. What would you pair with your cigars? And I suppose the second question, other cigar manufacturers have done like barrel aging, so like bourbon and rum aging. Have you ever considered that for yourselves as well?
Nice to see you, Peter. Thank you for the question. Where are you?
I'm in East London / Essex. So yeah, East London.
My man. So yeah, I'm fascinated with different parts of London as well for a lot of the graffiti art that gets done, and not just Banksy either. But you know, it's an interesting question, man, about pairing, right? And when you talk about other manufacturers and even Drew Estate, and well, do you pair your cigars with rum? Do you pair your cigar with a peated Scotch? Do you pair your cigar with And, you know, I think that from a standpoint of my response to your question would be like this. Why don't we do something and go 3D? You ready?
Mm-hmm.
Let's go 3D. Right now, you're living in 2D. You're in analog. Let's move into digital. We want to move into a digital space. So let's go 3D and let's triple it up. Let's take it one step further, okay? I'm making this up on the fly, my brother. So, but here's what I say to you. So if you think about it this way and you say, I really enjoy pairing a Monty No. 4 with rum or a Undercrown with a bourbon. And I sit down, have the two together, and the nuances back and forth, the playfulness of the smoke to the taste in your mouth, right? When you're smoking a cigar, it's not just this, you know, a lot of people don't realize how important. If you hold your nose while you're smoking, tell me what you're tasting. Start there.
Oh, wow.
I don't need to do it live because it may not be the prettiest thing, but oh, then you had to do it. So he's tasting nothing. So here's the deal. What happens is if you're holding your nose while you're smoking, you're not tasting too much. So when you start to go from there into now you're not holding your nose and you're smoking your cigar, there's a real difference of what you're tasting in your mouth that's from the smoke that you're bringing in, the draw. The flujo. But then there's something else about the wrapper of the cigar, and that has what I call grit to it, right? So when you're smoking a T52, you're getting a lot of grit from that Habano that's grown in the Connecticut River Valley. That grit that's in your mouth when you're smoking a Kentucky Fire Cured has so much grit, it's so heavy, the leaf. So it is called mouth feel. For those of you, like my man Scott, and for those of you who understand material and spirits, the mouthfeel of the bourbon, the mouthfeel of your Scotch, the mouthfeel of a malted, peated, whatever it is very critical to the taste. If you smoke a Connecticut shade cigar, including the Drew Estate shade Undercrown, a Connecticut shade leaf is like wax paper. It's not. You're not getting that grit. You ain't getting that super rich with particles in your mouth, and you're tasting. It's different. It's cleaner, it's neater, it's smoother, and you're losing that part of the experience. It's not part of it. So when you think about it that way and break it down to the compound, you start now to think about, all right, if I pair my cigar with a bourbon is one thing, but now let's take it one step further. So think about it from that aspect, from a standpoint of pairing it with your meal, pairing it with your booze, and pairing it with your cigar together, and doing that kind of a triple whammy. I think that gets really interesting, and you're able to, you know, really see how those tastes and smells combine together. And, you know, I mean, we geek out on this stuff, dude. I have a feeling, Peter, that you're a cigar fanatic and somebody who really there you go. Oh yes, great choice. Great choice. As a matter of fact, one of my good friends was the distiller, the master distiller of Stranahan's, and now he's with the new brand that Metallica did. It's actually a great product. It's called Blackened. That's his favorite spirit, and that type of pairing for me is great. Balvenie, beautiful product, and if that pairing. I think the heaviest tobacco from our side, some people will go with a beer sometimes with a spicy cigar. But for me, I think that a Liga Privada will pair with that absolutely beautiful, especially a T52 or a 9. Yeah, I could go on and on, but that's my answer.
I managed to mute myself. You'll be delighted to hear.
Thank
you. So there's a couple of other questions coming in from, I see Alan's asking you the question. Do you want to ask the question, Alan?
It was, it was so long ago, I can't remember.
No, Alan, not you,
I think,
Alan Moore.
Alan Moore. Sorry, I'll mute myself again.
That's the right answer.
Too many Alans, eh? Jonathan, what was the last cigar you smoked?
Last cigar I smoked was a Liga Privada T52.
Cool.
Stuff, yeah. Just to see to catch you out there, you had to say it was a Drew estate.
Yeah, well, I think people who I've met people, brand owners, who only smoke their own cigars, and part of that is because people who are really blending all the time and smoking so much. You're smoking a cigar. You have to be careful where your hobby and your passion where you lose that if it becomes your work, right? At the same time, there's a balance. There's a balance to it. So. Some cigar manufacturers will only smoke their cigars because they say, hey, I'm going to smoke 1 cigar a day, 2 cigars a day, whatever it is. And when I do, I'm going to smoke my own. I'm not going to waste palate on something else. Other people want to experience what other people are doing, or a cigar that they used to smoke with their dad, or whatever it is. For me personally, I used to walk around with a Padron hat. I remember how surprised people were back in the early days of Drew Estate. I had this Padron hat, and I used to wear it all the time. People were like, why are you wearing that hat? And I would say, because I like the brand. It's a great brand. And, same with Camacho. Back in the day, I used to have my Camacho hat, and I used to buy 4 boxes every couple of months from Corona Cigar Company of the Camacho Dark Corojos because I thought the product was brilliant. And I know the farm that it was grown in 1999, and I would stand at that farm at a mango field, and they had a piece of that mango field where they called mangosa, and they were growing that heavy leaf Corojo. And for me, a manufacturer is going to smoke what they're going to smoke, and their reasons are substantiated in what's right for them. So I've always thought that you should smoke everybody's stuff personally, but what are you smoking?
Kind of a bit of a fixation on Hoya de Nicaragua at the moment, and Drew Estate. But I suppose from your perspective, it shows the confidence you've got in your own brand to be happy to be seen smoking other brands, and that's probably says quite a lot.
Thank you so much, my brother. And where are you based?
I'm in Edinburgh.
Ah. Nice. Yeah.
Yeah.
We've swapped, Alan, haven't we? I'm north, living south.
Yeah. Yeah. I came up here for university and never went back. So enjoying it here. And I was at the 145th Robert Graham event, and so I met you there, and you kindly gave me 2 of the T52 Bellicosos in a box. On that night, it was still got the box. Great event.
Very good.
How were they?
Superb, strong. I was a little bit, taken aback how strong they were, but very good.
Okay, that's surprising to hear because you love Hoya, and unless you're smoking the new the Hoya, their new Connecticut shade is beautiful stick, the Antonio, but typically Hoya is stronger than our cigars mostly.
So Jonathan, talking about cigars, obviously I'm conscious time's gone very, very fast, and I hope everybody's quite happy to stay for a little bit longer. We're not going to do the 3, 4, 5 hours that you guys do in the States. I'd like to talk about the Johnathan Drew estate selection, because my understanding that's a very unique thing that you don't get into very often. I think the conversation started in a bar in Vegas with David Salem and Mitchell Johnathan, as most conversations tend to do in a bar. Not that I'm saying anything about David, more about Mitchell. And it kind of kick-started from there. And before we know it, we have the Johnathan Drew estate selection, which has proven to be a fantastic success. So from my perspective, it's been fantastic for you both to marry you two together. But if you'd like to talk about that, if you can, please, Jonathan, what that means to Drew estate.
Yeah, that's a special product that we did together. You know, one of the things about our company, we don't make a lot of brands for people. When you think about being a manufacturer, every manufacturer, a cigar manufacturer, a premium cigar manufacturer, has the right to choose their style, their approach to market, to path to market. Some manufacturers build their company on making brands for other people. And they say, hey, we don't want to have to go through the labor of, we got a good factory, we got a good blender, we buy good tobacco, but we don't want to have to market those brands. We want to make it for other people. And that's their style. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just different. Other manufacturers look to make their own brands, and if anybody else wants to come to them with a brand and they have their money and they're good people, whatever it is, they make the brands for them. We've always gone that other direction, you know, more towards, you know, Hoya or Padron. We've been, or Fuente, we've been very exceedingly careful on making brands for other companies. So, you know, we don't do this a lot at all. And, you know, for Mitchell, it was, that came together, and you were the nexus between us. And Willie did a great job on that blend. And I was not as much involved on the actual, believe me, I love to get wax poetic on things that I really, you know, feel really proud that I created or that I blended myself, and this was one that they really did together, and the result of it is really beautiful. People have responded really well to it. It's a nice medium plus blend, and that was something, like I said, it was really for us something special to do for Europe, and for, you know, so it was a unique moment for us in doing a blend for, you know, for another company. The wrapper on it is the T52. So that's a Habano seed grown in the Connecticut River Valley. And I'm looking at my cheat sheet a little bit because sometimes I get mixed up. I got so much stuff. So, you know, in all honesty, so the let's see, we got Brazilian binder, Nicaraguan, and Honduras filler. So think about it. You got the Connecticut stalk cut Habano. One thing to know about that, anything from the Connecticut River Valley is tremendously expensive. It's there's sometimes you get a tobacco like Ecuador. It's not an overly expensive tobacco, and it's brilliant and beautiful, whether it's Connecticut shade or whether it's the Sumatra seed or whether it's the Habano, especially the Habano. And you just catch it right. It's a great yield. But when you start getting into anything from the Connecticut River Valley, it's price prohibitive. Most manufacturers don't even want to use that material because it's so damn expensive. So it's got a very luxurious wrapper in that. Then think about the next piece of it, okay? In the Brazilian binder. It's not just Brazilian binder. You guys know the importance of a binder leaf, what it does for the functionality of the cigar. but also the taste that the binder gives. When you guys think about how we make a cigar and the costs behind that, I'm going to tell you all the secrets here of what does it cost to make a cigar, right? 1/3 of your cost is wrapper, 1/3 of your cost is binder filler, and 1/3 of your cost is labor. So those three toggles, those three switches, they move around a little bit, this, that, but that's a basic framework. And when you're thinking about your cost of making a cigar and the quality of the material that they chose in making this, you got the T52, the stalk cut Habana wrapper. You got a Brazilian binder. It's not just any Brazilian binder, because you can use Mata Sol, you can use Mata Norte, you can use Arapiraca. Those things, people don't even talk about that. This is a Mata Fina. So that's a Mata Fina binder, which is also a heavy leaf material and very expensive, so also luxurious, and it's Nicaraguan Honduran filler. So across the board, from the leaf selection that Willie and Mitchell chose, they really chose top level, top quality leaves. And the final taste on the cigar is delicious, and people have responded really well to it. We get calls in the United States about it. On this one, I give a big shout out to Mitchell and to Willie for doing a great job, and for you for bringing us together with them. So we're proud of that product.
That's brilliant. Now, Jonathan, when's the last time you did an event and nobody mentioned acid? Yeah? So we're not going to talk about acid. We'll save that for another day. Okay?
Yeah,
but what I'd like to, I'm conscious of time. I don't want it to be one of these events that kind of just dwindles off to the very, very end. So I want you to, we're launching a new cigar this week. It's a pitch, guys. The 4x32, the pocket rocket, as I call it. So do you want to tell us a little bit about those, please? What we're doing?
Which one are you releasing?
We've got the whole range. We're bringing in everything. We're bringing in number 9. We're bringing in T52. I'm doing the same as you now. I'm reading my notes.
You're bringing in the tin, all of our tin stuff.
Bringing the whole lot in, the whole lot. Yeah, all arriving. We're all arriving tomorrow, we believe. Andrew Ricardo. Yeah.
We have Ricardo with us. Are Ricardo on the call too?
He's down here. I can see him. He's hiding in the corner. Yeah.
Yes, I'm here.
What's the story, Ricardo? This is my man right here. I'm very proud of this guy. So give him a little info. I could talk forever about our tin products, but you're working with them and you're very involved in what we're doing. Tell us a little bit about those 4x32s and the tins.
Well, 4x32, the best way I can describe it for me, it's pretty much smoking like the whole cigar like you would normally do. You still get a full flavored cigar. It's pretty much, in my opinion, it's a full cigar, just in a smaller size. And the flavor and the profile that you get from these 4x32, you would never think that they're such a small cigar. You get such a big taste out of such a small package. And then just, to be honest, you can carry a whole tin in your pocket and you have smokes all day compared to having it in just a couple cigars in your pocket. I personally love the Liga 9. It's a great smoke I can have during lunch, on the way to work. It's a great cigar all around.
Yeah.
And I guess the great thing is, Ricardo, we're bringing in 7, so you can have 1 different cigar a day. Yeah?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
So they'll be on the shelves and in C.Gars from early next week.
Which 7 are you bringing in, Scott?
Oh, gosh. I'll get my crib sheet, okay?
Yeah.
We're bringing in the number 9 Liga Privada. We're bringing in the T52, the Undercrown Maduro Shade and Sungrown, the La Rutan, and the Tobacco Special. Basically, Jonathan, everything over 3 grams. Otherwise, we've got to cover it with great big, no women present, fucking horrible health warnings that would cover the whole tin. So that was the cut-off point, 3 grams or above. So anything above 3 grams, we already have the Acid Crush, the Connecticut, the Maduro. So we've got the full house, more or less. So I'm hoping they arrive tomorrow, because I promised Mitchell that he's going to have them on his shelf. And Nick down in the corner there from Newcastle, early next week.
Yeah,
Okay.
those 4x32s is a nice size because it allows you to bang one out without having to toss half your cigar if you have a meeting or this and that. So they're handy, and people like them. I mean, there's always a market for the tins, the 4x32s, and I think Ricardo caught it right from a standpoint of when you're blending a long filler, when you're blending even mixed filler, when you're blending a premium cigar. You're trying to get in a strike zone of every year you want that cigar to taste the same, as consistent as possible. And I always talk about it, how do you get there? And the answer lies in blending that cigar monthly. Then you got to do it weekly, and then you got to do it daily. And when you're able to blend the cigar, it's not just in the way you purchase tobacco. Oh, you got more cloud covering this year in Ecuador. You have an irrigation problem in the Connecticut River Valley. You have a problem of tobacco was stored too hot here or there. All of those things add in, and that's why we are a blended product, because that adds a lot to our consistency. But consistency doesn't just work from a standpoint of year to year. Consistency also works from a standpoint of there is a theme for Undercrown Maduro. Whether that's in a Robusto, whether that's in a Torpedo, or whether that's in a 4x32. And I think that Ricardo hit it on the mark that 4x32 still represents the brand in a way that we can be proud of. Because when you have your leaf manipulation, you're really with those smaller ring gauges, especially those tiny ones, a 4x32, you don't have the amount of tobacco to blend with. If you're rolling a Robusto or Toro or something, you're using 4.5 leaves, 5 leaves of tobacco. So just as filler, separate from your binder and wrapper. And some companies use 2 binders. Some people use a base and a binder. So I think we caught it right. And the people who buy them from you should be able to expect that same taste that they get. Slightly different, but still within the strike zone.
So, Jonathan, there's loads of questions we could talk about. We could talk about acid. We could talk about infusion. We could talk about, oh my goodness me. But I'm conscious that we're coming up to the 2-hour mark. So I think it's probably time for people either to eat in the UK or just carry on drinking or whatever they want to do, basically. So, I mean, unless anybody's got any questions, I'd like to kind of wrap it up, and if people want to sit amongst the group for another 10, 15 minutes, Paul's the host, so it's up to Paul really to what time he wants to go home tonight.
Scott, can I just jump in for a second?
Please, absolutely.
Thanks, Jonathan. Great fun as usual. The only thing I would say that is really interesting is that you described the Alternate Selection Drew Estate as kind of medium. I can tell you in the UK, we think that is very full. I'm telling you, that is the strongest cigar in my portfolio. The reviews have been absolutely fantastic, and it's really hit the spot for anybody on our customer base that wants a seriously strong cigar. We consider that a seriously strong cigar. That's why we made the references to boxing. It's a fighting cigar. It's an absolute killer. So anyway, that's my point. I love them though, but I can only smoke like 1 a day, usually at the end of the evening for me, because that's a full power smoke.
Yeah, something, that one, and one of the things I told you guys, from a standpoint of no brand is going to come out of Drew Estate, no product is going to come out of Drew Estate without me signing on board with it, because that's a big part of my responsibility. And in doing this project for you, I didn't have to think for even 5 minutes. It was something that from minute one, when Scott brought it up, I said, let's do it. This guy's the real deal. And I've learned so much more about you, as a matter of fact, over the last year and a half, because there's other parts of your business that I didn't understand, and your passions that I didn't know about you, and some mutual friends that we have. So it's very interesting to learn more about you and your business, and I've enjoyed it. And this cigar, as I told you, this was really a you and Willie. So even though I stand behind the cigar from a standpoint of the product that we made together, the vision that you had, and that we, ran the ball with you. But this is a cigar that you're right, it is a full-bodied stick. And in the United States, we do sometimes tend to say what we'll call something medium plus, where you guys are already at full. And you're right. So from a standpoint of positioning in the leaf, it is medium plus to full. And I'm actually, you consider that cigar to be more full body even than Hoya?
Yeah, definitely. On my palate. Others may not, but for me, it's very, very full.
Mm-hmm. So, you know, that's the beauty of what we do, Mitchell, is you know, we look at this smoking cigars and it's very subjective.
Of course.
One thing that's we both agree 100% about on this cigar, whether it's medium full or double extra full, the way you is that it's a heavy leaf. It's got the cigar is delicious. So, you know, I think people will have to smoke it for themselves to see if it's medium full or full, and be able to judge it on their own. But we're certainly proud to have done the project with you, and it's been an honor. And I look forward to reuniting because we had a great time doing the events together.
Have to come back.
Yeah, that was a great special time, and the fact that you guys had so much hospitality. Sitting in your store, your shop with my dad, and the piano player that you had,
Tor.
Yeah.
That was a magical. My dad and I have spoken about that night so many times. You know, that was a great evening, and you really give your customers an experience, and I'm really happy that you're proud of the product that we made together, and that's what it's all about, brother. You know, at this point in your world and my world and others who've been around for a while and doing this, you know, yeah, we do it to build our brand, our business, and we do it. We love the thrill of it, but also the satisfaction of it. So, yeah, thanks for doing that with us, brother. This has been a great night. I got to tell you, you know, from a standpoint of Mitchell and Ricardo out and representing Nicaragua, and our team, we have David Salem, who is a legend in the cigar industry and one of my mentors from a standpoint of, especially over the last 5-6 years, and really getting to hear so many stories from David Salem, a big part of our company on the international side, and Mac, who we love to death, and who runs the head of our international side, and with David, and obviously it's Scott bringing us all together, and it's a family, and this evening tonight felt that way, and it was a really fun thing to do, and we have fun when we're on the road. We have fun when we're making tough decisions, and tonight sharing some time with some of the smokers out there and some of the cigar gang, and was really a great night for you guys and a great day for me. So I really thank you guys, and thank you for the correction in terms of that, Mitchell, because that project was so heavily Willie's. Anyway, bottom line is thanks so much for today. Really enjoyed it, and sharing some of our stories of the past. And what a great question in terms of Nicaragua. What a great question. Nicaragua, where we have to go. We'll have a beautiful future together, and we'll watch amazing things happen in our country. And it's in our heart, and we're always there in our mind and in our heart. So I'm signing out. I have a meeting to get ready for myself, and then I'm going to call it a day and have my own pint. And love you guys. Appreciate it. Had a great night. Great time.
Well, all I ask, Johnathan, is to say thank you so much for tonight and giving up your time to join us really wholeheartedly. I'll have a wee dram as I'll keep going. But there is a few questions that are coming in, which means we're not going to ask them tonight. We'll save them up for the next one. Okay?
I'm in, brother, and I didn't give up anything. I didn't give up anything, man. This was there's no giving up. This was great.
It's an expression. It's an expression. We appreciate it. Believe me.
Get all technical on me, brother. I love you. And
I love you too, Johnathan, and I look forward to the day we get a hug, okay?
Yeah, man. Thanks so much, guys. You guys have a
Thank you.
great evening. Be
Thank you,
safe.
Dad.
Be safe. Oh, I will, brother. I will. As a matter of fact, let me get a quick picture. I'll get a quick picture
On behalf of C.Gars, just like to say thank you to
Hang on. Paul, 1 second. Oh.
Got it. What were you saying, Paul?
I just wanted to say thank you to yourself and all the team at Drew Estate that joined the call this evening, and also to Scott and the team at Tor. It's a great partnership between the three of us. Much appreciate the time from everybody. Go to the C.Gars website, have a look at all the virtual Herfs coming up for the next several weeks. Buy your samplers, and look forward to joining you all on the Thursday evenings at 6 o'clock.
Thank you very much, Paul. Thank you, Mitchell.
Pleasure. Thank you, everybody. Thanks, Jonathan. Great to see you.
Thank you, Mitchell.
Thanks, everybody, for joining us.
Guys.
See you soon.
Thank-
All the best.
Bye.
Thanks, JD. Thanks, everybody.
Cheers.
Thank you. Bless.